Alright, after a couple technical difficulties, we are basically just about ready to get started with Game 1. Right now, we are facing on Team Astra, Diagnosis Skill Issue, and on Team Umbra, Team Solar. Sol, you want to talk a little bit about Solar?
Sure. Seems only appropriate, right? Solar is a CC Madness team. They are mainly Aether-based, and they are comprised of many of the leaders from the CC Madness. And you might recognize some of their players from the older team, Kugane Drift.
Hell yeah, and DSI is probably one of the more storied teams that exists within the league. This is a team that's basically gone back since the beginning of competitive LP for CC specifically, having competed in Wolves League, having competed in multiple tournaments, won Community Cup tournaments. These are a team to watch, and especially with some newer pickups, especially with the joining of Aether's Jay Vermillion, it's definitely going to be one of the more interesting teams to watch all throughout the tournament.
I think DSI actually might have the highest concentration of rank 1s. Especially depending on if you count Jay's multiple rank 1s from multiple data centers.
God, I think Jay has gotten rank 1 on... Oh my god, how many DCs has gotten rank 1 on now? This man is a force.
It might be 3.
Might be 3 indeed. Alright. Well, looks like we are... Those are definitely the teams that we are probably going to be looking out for. One of the things I definitely want to point out right now is that... so a lot of the bracket for this particular tournament is definitely going to be looking towards seeing who goes further. So, like, a lot of the bracketing itself is based on the seeding. So, like, for a lot of these first few matches, you're definitely going to be seeing some particularly interesting possible underdog stories. Now, DSI is definitely one of the more storied teams here. And while Team Solar has definitely been putting in all that work, it's going to be really interesting to see what particular strategies they've got in order to take down such a storied team. So, you got any ideas? How would you take down DSI?
You know, having spent the last night scrimming them, I think, honestly, the best thing to do is play what you're comfortable with and just play well. That's really all you can do. I don't think there's any sort of, like, magic bullet counter comp to what DSI runs, because they're healy, they're tanky, and they all know what they're doing, and so it is just absolutely vicious. Their synced burst is incredible, and y'all will see that the second they go on someone, it's over for them.
It's definitely going to be an uphill battle, but it's not over yet. Team Solar itself has also been putting in a phenomenal amount of work. So they are a team that's really been putting in work basically since the league itself has started to become substantially more popular. These are a bunch of players that have been putting in scrims basically every week. These guys are non-stop vicious for this particular amount of practice, and it's definitely going to be interesting to see whether or not any of that can what the results of that particular practice are going to be today. Looks like we are starting our ready check.
And what also looking at Solar's comp, which I know y'all watching can't see just yet, but I do note they have a Paladin, which is actually something I would say that is against skill issue might be a very smart pick too. So depending on, of course, the person's comfort with it, but also when it comes to assuming, you know, who's going to win based off team, you know, brand recognition alone, I will note that last week's tournament, the Mog Talk tournament, had an absolute upset with rank 1 going to a team that no one had heard of before, and that was Team Wolfus. So anything's possible as people start putting together more teams and get more active in the LP scene. We'll see some more dark horses coming out of the woodworks, hopefully.
Absolutely nothing is taken for granted. And as we enter the game, as we enter Polystra, on Team Astra, we've got DSI. On Team Umbra, we've got Solar. Definitely going to be interesting to start looking at what the comps are, what the differences in these particular comps or these particular choices. Now, a lot of the interesting thing about how the metagame is currently evolving is that with the recent nerf of Paladin, especially its nerf of its LB, and the damage reduction on the people who are not immune, Paladin itself has become a much less mandatory pick. So now you've started to see a metagame evolve almost in two halves. One in which you've got Paladin and one in which you don't. And a lot of that, you don't have the Paladin comps. Those tend to be these double healer comps with a lot of like a tanky bruiser type melee DPS, functioning as your tank. That's a lot of what we're seeing right now in Diagnosis skill issue with their White Mage and their Astra. Meanwhile, on Team Umbra, a lot of what you're seeing right now is like higher damage, a lot of higher focus, even if individual units tend to be a little bit squishy. Looks like we are getting into it.
And we see original DSI probably trying to position to get Blast Arrow off to start the engage. Looks like they're going to let their drawn card expire. There it goes, and now we are joined. We have Komachi using guard, and down goes the first target for Solar.
An immediate explosion, huge burst sync onto Team Umbra's, or on Team Astra's side.
There goes the Paladin. It's about to happen, guaranteed.
Focus target's currently on the Paladin. Yeah. Paladin goes down.
Yep. Sir Moon looked like he was taking some damage there. He's safe, though. He has no mana. He'll probably stop to Elixir. And what I guarantee you, Skill Issue is going to try to run down Solar right now, not let them get out of spawn. They're on the Summoner, who's sitting in guard, but there's not much Solar can do to peel them out of this situation. Down they go. We have LB Economy on Team Skill Issue about to come up with Monk and Ninja, meaning that they're probably going to roll at least 2 picks here.
With the White Mage Laser coming up too, and a huge stagger picked off. After winning that first fight, it looks like it's going to be really rough for Team Umbra to try to get this together, especially facing down these faster charging LBs. White Mage Laser's going out.
Yep, White Mage Laser into Assassinate. There goes the Ninja LB on the Paladin. They're on the Monk now. Jay Vermillion still has his LB. Looks like they're not sending it. They're going to finish off with the Ninja LB. Jay might use it on the Summoner here to just wrap this up, but doesn't need to. They're not on the point, and they are running away from it. So that is going to conclude the first round.
Wow, an incredibly decisive game 1. What are these damage charts?
That is what happens when you fight Skill Issue, if you're not ready.
All right, looks like the next map itself is going to be Volcanic Heart. Seems we're going to be rotating these maps for the rest of the day inside of release order, going from Palystra to Cloud9 to C9. Or sorry, from Palystra to Volcanic Heart to Cloud9 to Clockdown. And since a lot of these maps themselves have a lot of differences between its terrain, its geography, it really incentivizes or moves against particular class choices, especially on Volcanic Heart, where there are a lot of tight hallways, a lot of narrow corridors. Suddenly, the fact that people are going to have a difficult time maintaining line of sight makes melee champions, or like melee ranged champions that would otherwise have a pretty difficult time getting in there, substantially stronger. So looks like we are seeing a swap on Komachi-chan. Moving from the White Mage to the Dragoon, is that right?
Yes, it looks like they're going for an even higher damage output, which, if you can, believe it, after that performance from the last match, they don't necessarily need it. And on the other side, we see that Solar has switched King Coconut onto Warrior. They also have a Monk now. They are looking like they're going to try to interrupt that flow that Skill Issue gets going, which is really important. They're
and especially
high tempo.
Especially with these tight corners that definitely emphasize grouping up, or at least make it much harder to not end up in a clump. Warrior tends to be a lot stronger. It's going to be interesting to see whether or not they can get any large area crowd controls and just try to stop that bleeding.
Right, like, and Solar's taking a very cautious approach.
Looks like Team Solar immediately goes in with that Warrior, and Team Diagnosis Skill Issue is just ready for them. Immediately, they blow up before they can even finish their Primal Rend animation. Health bars are going down. Next target is onto the Monk. Looks like they're going to go down too. And just like that, DSI have already gotten control of the point.
Yep. Next is going the Bard. It looks like Solar will need to retreat at this point. The Paladin's going to try to stall for some time, go down. But there's not much they can do. The Ninja is going to be chased by Skill Issue, and they're not going to survive. At this point, it's actually generally better to die because you're not going to escape. And the longer
really
you wait,
rough.
the longer you're going to stagger your team's respawns. And on a very short map like Volcanic Heart here, you need to get back up and back in the fight because they're going to have one team fight chance left before this ends. But it looks like they're not going to wait on Sunyata to come back up. King Coconut using their Bloodwetting and going in. That's a bold strategy. Jay Vermillion is the target. He has LB. They got to take him down before he gets that free pick. Out goes the Ninja and the Dragoon LB, though. Ninja LB is rolling. Let's see if they're about to get a second kill on the Monk. There it is. And will they be able to kill the Paladin with that Satan? They very well might. Jay Vermilion also using their LB. All that's left on Solar is their Nin and their Bard. Nin has Guard, Nin has LB, but there's no way they're going to get a target low enough to use it with this setup, and that concludes the second round.
An absolutely dominant performance from Diagnosis Skill Issue, especially for a team that's this particularly storied and with this much history and talent behind it. Definitely one of the stronger teams to watch today.